Good morning, viewers. Happy Friday. This is News 6 meteorologist David Nazario back for your Friday tropical update. And honestly, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm super pumped. It's been not a rough week, but it's been a very fast-paced week. I honestly cannot believe it is already November 8th. We just had Halloween. It feels like Halloween was weeks ago, even though it was only last Thursday. It's good to see everybody. I hope you're starting your day off on a very powerful and positive note out there, wherever it is you may be tuning in from our News 6 Plus app, from the News 6 YouTube channel, or the Just Weather channel. And in fact, I see a lot of folks already popping up over on Just Weather. Thank you so much for joining us. To shout out, we have Mike, Carmen Poole, Mick and Marley, a lot of longtime viewers. So good to see you this morning. Daniel Schwartz. I want to address a comment right out of the gate. Let's see. Scrooge McDuck. The Weather Center Nazario page is not dead, my friend. I promise you that. I know I've been rocking with News 6, kind of cranking out the content for everybody here, but I can promise you that that channel is not dead. And with what we're going to discuss today, if that does come to a bit more of a consensus and come to fruition, I will probably be popping up on that channel sooner than later. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Taking a look at our large-scale water vapor satellite shot, you can see there's a couple of different features out there, minus that wacky looking for whatever fritz just happened with the water vapor imagery, but that's neither here nor there. You can see Raphael is front and center in the central Gulf of Mexico. It did regain Category 3 status again overnight yesterday during that diurnal maximum period when overnight these tropical cyclones tend to take full advantage of the warmth that's been trapped underneath all that cloud cover. It helps to reinforce the rising motions that really crank up the intensification phase. It took advantage full force, but is now starting to interact a little bit more with the wind shear. You can see on the north side of that system some of that elongation in the rainfall and the cloud field with it. That's that southerly shear getting ready to act on it full time, as well as that dry air that it's entrenched within across much of the Gulf of Mexico. If you look back over Hispaniola, it just cleared the island of Puerto Rico. That is our other AOY as well, still at a 20/20 shot. We'll get into the stats here in a moment, but that could possibly be influencing our weather here in Central Florida as we get into Sunday and especially Monday, the Veterans Day holiday. So we have those two areas to watch, and dare I say, I'm going to start coining this phrase, but hold on to your butts. We're going to be watching a third feature possibly in the Caribbean Sea. So moving right along, let's take a look at our tropical weather outlook. You can see that Hurricane Raphael is back down to a Category 2. It was just recently a Cat 3, having weakened down. You can see it kind of taken on a bit of more of a comet shape if you look at the cloud field on that infrared satellite shot. Then we have that other area of interest over Hispaniola, very broad area of circulation. That's why National Hurricane Center gives it a low shot at doing anything over the next 2 days, and even to this point next week, only a 20% shot it does anything. Down in the Caribbean, where you can see that red circle, that is where conditions once again, thanks to low wind shear, all that leftover tropical moisture down there, and the backside of the MJO may just try to ramp things up. So let's continue on with the show. I want to talk to you about this. So first and foremost, 10 a.m. advisory from National Hurricane Center. You can see the central pressure is back up now to 961 millibars with winds just outside of Category 3 intensity. We're down to 110 miles an hour sustained, obviously gusting in to the Category 3 threshold. But check this out. This is wild to see here. If we fast forward and we open up the projected path, look at what happens here. Just look at what the timestamps do. This has been such an incredible storm to track. Unfortunately, we felt it in Jamaica. We felt it in the Cayman Islands. Western Cuba was pummeled by a rapidly intensifying Hurricane Raphael a few days ago. And now this system just doesn't know what it wants to do. It is breaking all the rules. I've even spoken with other meteorologists, not only here at the News 6 Pinpoint Center, but on social media. We're talking masters, PhD meteorologists who are just kind of like, There are no rules. This thing just plays on its own. It's on an island. This is making history even as we speak. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out our News 6 web article regarding how Raphael is setting historical records, in that article we have a brief graphic that shows you through the month of November where these systems typically go. And the fact that we even have a hurricane, let alone a major hurricane, those are two different statistics that it's already setting in the Central Gulf heading west. That is such an anomaly. And Chief Meteorologist Candace Campos and I spoke about this earlier this morning, that it's incredible when you take inventory of 2024. We had Hurricane Beryl at the very end of June, an anomaly, another record-setting major hurricane. And now it's almost ironic that we're into November, almost precisely 5 months later, when you'd least expect something like this happening. We're once again witnessing history. So we may not have actually hit the full bona fide, 25, some folks out there said 30 named storms for this hyperactive hurricane season, but 2024 is most definitely going in the record books. Here's a look at our latest spaghetti plots. Again, it just looks like someone took a bowl of spaghetti and just dropped it on the Gulf of Mexico. You see the loop-de-loop, almost like a pseudo-Hurricane Jeanne from 2004 there, going on to the immediate south of Louisiana. We have that one rogue member, the purple member, that does want to try to take it back towards Florida. Now, I will say right out of the gate, if this does circle back towards the Gulf coastline, or dare I say towards us here in Florida, it'll be a sheared mess of maybe rain, some breezy conditions, but it will not be anything close to what it is right now. The shear and the dry air and just the sinking motions from high pressure to its north will not allow this system to once again intensify into anything we really need to worry about if it were to once again break all the rules and just kind of do its own thing, despite what the spaghetti plots are showing here. So let's continue on with the show. With that being said, we talked Raphael. I want to talk about this. So Raphael has set a number of statistics. We've reached beyond the most named storms after the peak of the hurricane season. September 25th is the calendar, per the calendar anyways, when the peak of the season diminishes, and we start to get into that downward descent towards the ending of the hurricane season. We are almost realizing like a third individual peak now. Since the month of September, the brief period of time where we had 4 or 5 different AOIs on the board in October, now we're once again potentially, and I would honestly guess, I have the model data pulled up to my left here, and it's looking fairly consistent across the board. It's still outside of the usual hurricane center window, but I'd put a little wager down that we might have just another blip in the Caribbean. So what do I mean by favorable conditions for tropical activity? So first and foremost, we've already mentioned MJO. We have a ton of web stories on that if you want to check them out. We've mentioned the moisture. We've mentioned the lack of dry air. And believe it or not, because we are now on the backside, the back end of the center, the core of that MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, we're actually seeing a bit more of the improvement in our overall conditions down there for potential tropical development. It's like a combination of what you would see during the month of September or August, coupled with climatology for the month of November. We have a front coming down that's going to bring in some extra vorticity. We have a wave coming in off of the MDR of the Atlantic, and they're going to kind of meet in the middle, right underneath where our favorable environment could be in place for tropical activity. Now, we're going to continue to move along, and I'm going to show you my next favorite graphic. I love this puppy here. So these are our tropical probabilities, and you can see I'll go ahead and get my face out of the camera so we can really zoom on down in. If you look over the Gulf of Mexico, we have Raphael. Take a look at how much more, if you met with us yesterday and even before that, how much our tropical probabilities have come up. So this is still going to be a ripe spot for some potential tropical activity down there. And you can see even beyond that into Thursday and Friday of next week, the Euro continues to carry an increasing risk for tropical development. As of right now, it kind of has it crashing into Central America. This is a possible solution, but regardless, the main takeaway here I want for you all to see is that this is going to be an area that we're going to want to watch. We have the MJO. We still have fairly modest instability throughout the atmosphere. And when I say throughout, I mean from the surface of the ocean out there all the way up to where weather just kind of stops. It's called the troposphere. That's where all of our weather phenomena occurs. That is your layer. Everywhere in between that is open season for thunderstorms, rain, clouds, you name it. Anything in the weather that you want to put on the planet happens within that layer, the troposphere. And as a result, with the MJO being our large-scale mechanism, even the Euro, and I'll rewind this for you all to see as well. This way we can go ahead and draw a little bit on this chart. You can see right there is when we really start to peak the favorability. This has been a hot spot almost all of hurricane season. And when we get back from our break here in about a minute or so, I'll walk you through some of the pieces here that we're going to be watching very closely over the next 5 to 7 days into next week. We have a wave coming in from the west, and we have a frontal boundary that's going to be coming in from the northwest, or no, the east, moving west, and then a frontal system to our northwest. And that's what's going to help to kind of try to spin this up just a little bit. So with that being said, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. When we come back, I'll not only make sure to leave some time at the very tail end of our briefing for a quick Q&A, especially since I see the Just Weather chat popping off over on News 6. I want to give a warm welcome to Linda saying good morning, as well as Manolo Rivera. Hi, bring us good news for Puerto Rico. I don't have bad news. We kind of have neutral news down there, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. This next feature, potential. I'm using air quotes because obviously we're kind of just spitballing here, having a casual Friday conversation amongst weather enthusiasts and friends. So stick with us. Coming up after the 2-minute break, we're going to dive into some of the more finite pieces, talk a little bit more about what records Raphael has set, and then I'll answer any questions that you all may have before we wrap up on this beautiful Friday morning. We'll talk to you again very soon. And we're back. Those 2 minutes, I swear, feel like 30 seconds. I was just glancing over at our model data, all the 12Z model data coming in, just to kind of get a feel for what's happening out there. Somebody already mentioned it in the chat. I will not be showing the 12Z GF. We have the 6Z, but we're not going to show the 12Z GFS because, again, favorite catchphrase, it's currently in hold on to your butts mode. So now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what is happening out there. So we're taking a look at the current GFS spin and wind. That's a terminology or a title that Jonathan has coined this overlay. This is actually our upper level vorticity with the upper level atmospheric winds. That's why he calls it spin and wind, because all that just sounds like, what are you saying, David? You know, you're losing us. I'm about to turn you off. So The reason I have this up is there's a couple of different moving pieces we're going to take a look at. First and foremost, you see Raphael up there in the Gulf of Mexico. Notice how it has those blues, the reds, the pinks, and all that. That shows our low pressure. That's where we see a lot of the spin, rapid spin in the environment. So as I go forward in time, if you watch what happens out there near the Lesser Antilles, you see that? And I'll go ahead and get my telestrator out, this little piece right there. So in the winds, if you look, there's already a broad area of spin. Now, what that tells us, meteorologists, above that spin down at the surface, we must have something lifting up, creating that low pressure. Whenever you see low pressure down at the surface, something is obviously removing mass from that level. And usually when it comes to weather, you have rising motion. It's that instability. That's the MJO at work here. That's your favorable setup in terms of your lifting mechanism. What I have circled to the right of that, to the south of Puerto Rico, that's our little tropical wave that's out there cooking in the Atlantic that will be working its way through the Lesser Antilles and approaching that area with the lift over top of it. So I'll clear the ink here and we'll march this forward just a little bit more and take a look at what happens. I have us zooming on in. Now, there's a couple things at work, and I'll step us through it together. So notice how we have these little pieces of spin in the atmosphere. There's a little bit of it getting pulled in on the west side of our broad vortex. This is what a lot of our models and their associated ensembles are thinking could pull it all together. Remember, tropical cyclones, they're consolidated energy. They're consolidated warm spin in the atmosphere. So with that wave wandering in from the east and that energy coming in from the northwest, with that area of lift, it's going to come together. And notice what my hands were doing. As they meet, they're going to start to converge. And that area of spin that's already present in the atmosphere might try to get this to go, just like we saw with Raphael. And then the rest is history. If I take us out even further in time, there you have it. We're witnessing the consolidation process via the vorticity. And I'm going to stop the clock right there because we don't need to see beyond that. We already know what happens after that for all of you over on Just Weather. If you look at the GFS, you can find it on Tropical Tidbits. You can go to weathermodels.com. You name it, whichever weather website you like. You can go beyond this point. What we're focusing on here is where we might see another organized storm try to show itself. So we're not going to go beyond that just for the sake of, not freaking anybody out. Obviously, we don't want that on a Friday. So here is a look at the GFS winds. I'm going to quickly launch through this just for the sake of keeping time. Just for the sake of keeping time, I want to make sure that I get through everything. This is the GFS on the large scale, and if you watch, there's that broad area of spin that slowly manifests itself into another named storm. Now, obviously, I'm only showing you the GFS. To tell you the truth, in our Barron system, we only have access to the long-range GFS. We have the Euro, but the Euro doesn't quite see it as much. The ensembles do. We don't have the ensembles in our internal system. Otherwise, I would show you. So that's the thing. If you think I'm only using the GFS to hype everybody up, it's not that. It's just I don't want to have to go back and forth from my show to another website and then the show and then another website. So just if you'd like to fact check us, head on over to Tropical Tidbits, click Orlando. We have a thorough story, clickorlando.com. We're breaking it down more in depth. You can check it out there, or you can just, how goes it? You'll probably see it on social media. You can see that our models are in agreement for about the same date and time something might try to juice up. And speaking of juice, this is a look at our OHC. This is our ocean heat content down there. The Gulf of Mexico has cooled some. We have Raphael out there helping to tap into some of that energy that's still in the ocean out there. But the Caribbean, because Helene was so far to the west, Milton wasn't quite down there, Debbie wasn't quite down there, we really haven't had anything big form up where my little yellow circle is drawn right there. I'll go ahead and fade us over so we can take a closer look. Look at all this tropical fuel as the title stipulates. This is all warm ocean heat content that is still available for these systems to try to feed off of. So even though we're into the month of November, we have our intra-seasonal forcing, as it's called, alongside a isolated piece of very hot water. I say isolated because if you look and I zoom us out, even the Atlantic has come down in terms of overall energy. It's just the Caribbean now that we're waiting to hopefully see subside a little bit more. And then last but not least, before I open up the floor to questions, if you look at the wind shear, there really isn't too much out there. You can see over the Gulf of Mexico right over here. I'll bust out my handy-dandy pen tool. You see all the wind shear that's over the Bay of Campeche, the southern central Gulf of Mexico. That's helping to rip apart Raphael. We have some wind shear to the north, which is also impeding the development of our current AOY. But then down in the Caribbean, we're still sitting pretty. In fact, our long-range ensembles, which I can maybe show you another date and time or for another show, they actually have a large anticyclone just sitting down there. And remember, if you have the anticyclone well above you, in between that, you have the rising motion, the lift, and then down at the surface, you get lower pressure. That's pretty much how low and high pressure forms across the planet. You either have something pushing down on the ground, creating high pressure, or something lifting the air up, creating low pressure. And in this case, every single model, Canadian, Euro, American, you name it, has an area of low pressure at ground level. And then above that, hovering overhead, you have the anticyclone pulling the air apart, creating that lift. So we still have prime ingredients down there for something to try to get itself going. I know we're tired. I know that a lot of us have black eyes and we're bruised from this hurricane season. And trust me, this is not what I want to be talking about. I'm trying to plan vacations, plan Thanksgiving meals, Veterans Day for my veterans out there, my service members, trying to have a good time out there. But it's my job and it is my duty to make sure that we're at least keeping an eye on what could possibly be coming. And if you haven't noticed, I went ahead and zoomed on in because it's time for a quick Q&A. We're going to go ahead and start off on News 6, the YouTube channel. I have Kevin Hawthorne asking, why is the Gulf of Mexico, I'm assuming you meant, do you know why the Gulf of Mexico is warm? So there's a couple of different things. We have our ocean current that moves through there from the Caribbean, that works its way up into the central and eastern Gulf of Mexico, supplying the Gulf with its natural source of warmer equatorial waters directly from the western Caribbean. You've probably heard of the loop current. That's an indication of the presence of that feed of warmer ocean water. But on top of that, during the summertime, because of the angle of the sun, and most of the time we have high-pressure ridging, stopping any cooler weather or cloud cover, that's why the waters just naturally warm up. We're also in a positive what's called Atlantic meridional mode and Atlantic Nino, believe it or not. So that's why we're naturally seeing a little bit of that increased sea surface warmth everywhere. Let me go over to Just Weather. I see a few other questions on there. Let's see. I see Atmospheric Purgatory 2 once again saying that I beg for money for my YouTube channel. I'm going to once again say I'm not even on my YouTube channel, so your comment is just looking a little silly out there right now. Says I do this for subs, not even on his YouTube channel. I guess I don't know. So, Genesis, how much longer do we have to hold on to our butts? We're tired and they've been hurting since the hurricane season. That, I wish I could pin that comment. That is the best comment I've seen in a long time. So, hopefully, over the next 2 weeks, we can let go and kind of just ride off into the sunset and say bon voyage to the 2024 hurricane season. I would give it another maybe week and a half to 2 weeks. I don't foresee anything happening to impede on our Thanksgiving or our Black Friday shopping towards the end of November. We should be able to say goodbye once and for all and render a salute to the 2024 season after whatever happens in the Caribbean into next week and early the following. Ethan Stefan over on Just Weather. Did you see the latest run of the GFS? Has a storm coming? Do you believe this could happen? So, Ethan, I didn't want to read the full comment because I don't want to alarm anybody. I know you're probably going to see this on social media, over on other YouTube channels. There's probably somebody making a video, even as I'm doing my live stream, saying major hurricane incoming. It is doable. Remember what we mentioned about Raphael? Historically, every single system that has formed in the month of November has hit Florida. Every single one, just about. Raphael is the anomaly setting history. So if we do get another storm climatology has to kick in one way or another. Now, that doesn't mean it will ultimately hit Florida. There's other solutions. Either dies, gets sheared apart, never forms, or it goes off towards the east. It's not the end all be all. But to answer your question, is it a doable solution? Yes. Is it the most likely outcome where we stand right now? No. We're just looking. We're just investigating. We're taking a look at what's to come because it is still hurricane season. Christine Estrada over on Just Weather. Remember when people were saying that the season was a bust? I do very much so, and now 2024 is making us pay. Phil Klotzbach is probably kicking back in his chair like, yeah. But alrighty, folks, if you have any additional questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to drop it in the comments section down below. I've been a bad noodle, and I haven't gotten back to some of your previous comments, although there haven't been too many. I'll hash out some time today to reach back into the comments once we conclude the live stream, but you've been a phenomenal audience today and throughout the week. It's such a pleasure to be able to sit down and talk weather with everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful Veterans Day weekend. Regardless of if you served or not, say thank you to a veteran. Definitely take the time to think about, what's been going on out there. But with that being said, you all know the drill. This is the Digital Weather Center signing out.